Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show, the blessed 18th show of this season for the 18th game. We didn't know we were going to get this show. We didn't know we were going to be able to do one for this week, Wild Card Weekend, but here we are. And we're playing a team that has already beaten us twice. And you know what they say? It is hard to beat a team 3 times in one season. I guess we're going to find out just how hard in a couple of days here, but we're going to talk about as much as we can of it. We're going to try to figure out how to solve this 49er puzzle. So I am Brendan of Seahawks, Brendan Nelson. That is Brandon of the Hawks Nest. How you doing tonight, Brandon?
I'm doing great, man. We got playoff week. Niner fans got me lit up a little bit over here, Brendan. I'm not gonna lie. I got a little bit of a fire up here. It took me a couple days in this week. I was hearing some of the national crap out there. Now I'm hearing it from these Niner fans. I'm up. I'm ready. Let's go. Is it game day yet? I'm ready to shut these Niner fans up. I'm ready to shock the world.
Yeah. So we're first up this weekend too, by the way. Saturday at 1:30. We are first to go. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of pressure on us to put on a good show because you take a look at what's going on with these other playoff games. We got the Skylar Thompson Miami Dolphins. You've got the Anthony Brown Baltimore Ravens. We need some good games here, man, because I can tell you right now, those 2 games, we have a problem.
Yeah. Surprised the NFL didn't wait on this one an extra day because, as much as it's not the ideal matchup with those considering the quarterback situation, like you said, you think this would be more ideal for the prime Sunday day matchup. But hey, let's put a show on, Brendan. That would definitely do that. I'm expecting one too. So let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we've played this 49ers team twice this year. We play them twice every year. So we know them pretty well. I feel like we know them pretty well.
Yeah.
But I guess one thing that's emerged recently that is interesting, ever since the 49ers plugged in Brock Purdy to the quarterback position, they have become one of the highest scoring offenses in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's right up there with teams like the Chiefs and the Bengals. So now the Niners were scoring pretty well with Jimmy Garoppolo, but I still find it interesting that their offense has become markedly better with Brock Purdy over Jimmy Garoppolo. So is Brock Purdy better, or do you think this is just kind of an aberration of a small sample size?
My opinion is that it's an aberration of a small sample size. He has played really good football. I don't think he's been tested against the toughest division defenses, but look, the Commanders are on this stretch, the Buccaneers are on this stretch, and that's with them putting up 30 points a game. So I think that he's definitely doing better than Jimmy did this year. I still think that he's benefiting a little bit from nobody's got any tape on the guy. Nobody knows his tendencies. Nobody knows what they need to take away from him on. You do have that stuff on Jimmy Garoppolo. I do feel like a little bit too that eventually a guy like this does eventually come back down to earth. They're over there calling him Brock Montana over there. So I think he's played a little bit outside of himself a bit. It also, to me, Brendan, shows a little bit of the benefit, as I've told you, or as but not told you, but as I'm trying to make my argument for. The point being is that we're moving more into an age now where the team can drive the quarterback position a little bit more than it had, let's say, 10 years ago, or where the narrative and thought process was out there about quarterbacks. You can now see these more middling quarterbacks come in, and if they've got the right supporting cast around them, and I'd offer even Jalen Hurts as kind of that guy, they can really elevate the position. And we always think it's the opposite, where the quarterback's the guy that has to do that. And I think that we're getting more and more proof. Geno showed you that this year as well. But there's other examples across the board in the NFL this season that are showing you this is a little bit more of where the trend's going towards, I think, in general terms with the quarterback position. So I think he's playing really well. I do think he's benefiting from that defense as good as they are. That helps when you got the running game, when you have all the parts to work with. But he's certainly doing nothing to hurt them, and he's making some good plays within that too.
Right. So if you could have this game with a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo, or you could have the game as it is with Brock Purdy, what scenario would you as a Seahawks fan prefer?
Brock Purdy.
Really? Okay. So you think Jimmy's a better. Okay, that's probably pretty reasonable. I think there's definitely a big push right now of people saying like, oh, this Brock Purdy's much better, but you bring up some really good points there about the small sample size that people can kind of fall in love with a little bit.
Yeah, and the quarterback's number, he's got all the benefits to a quarterback that you would want to have. From a guy that especially he has arm limitations. You know, folks, look, if he had an NFL arm with how he processes, with how he moves, with his quick release, with his accuracy inside of 15 yards, why in a quarterback dearthy market was he not even picked in the top 5 rounds? Well, because NFL evaluators went and looked at him and said he can't push the ball up the field and make NFL throws. That's the real bottom line with it. And while Garoppolo is not the guy with the most biggest arm, and he can't throw a 9 route to save his life, he's going to struggle on post routes. But there's still a few more throws I think that he can kind of put in his bag that I don't think are necessarily in Purdy's bag on a consistent basis. And that's the real big difference to me with it. But yeah, it's absolutely, there's been quarterbacks that have come in and flashed for a hot minute. You can't get caught up in that hot minute. You know, it's especially with a guy like this, where it's not there's not necessarily that pedigree of talent there to really believe that he's going to be able to just Tom Brady this thing. And that's what he is after 6 games. We've realized he's that. I don't buy that.
Right. That's probably the most sensible way of looking at things. But these Niners fans, you know, they're getting a little excited right now.
Again, real chatty over there. Real chatty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brennan,
kind of off topic here, only kind of on topic here. But what do you think happens next year, week 1, with that Niners quarterback situation? What's going down?
Part of the love that I would have in my heart for us winning this game is because it would, Brendan, throw their whole situation there into disarray. Not only winning this game would be good to continue on the Seahawks season, but you could be throwing a team into a place of desperation and panic who are in their Super Bowl window, as opposed to us trying to elevate and ascend to our Super Bowl window. And Brendan touches on in his question why within that, not because the rest of the team isn't good, but because there is going to be outright camps like something out of Anchorman, you know, where all the different fighting groups come up. You're going to have your Trey Lance groups, and you're going to have your Garoppolo groups, and you'll have your Brock Purdy groups, and it will probably be existing within the front office as well as to what they should be kind of doing going forward a bit. And there's not going to be any certain answers there, Brendan. And I think you would definitely upset that a little bit more than if Purdy goes through and he wins, they're going to feel great because they've got, you know, they hope Lance develops, but if not, Purdy's their backup plan. They let a competition take place and they're perfectly fine at that point. So a lot of this depends on how the season finishes for them, Brendan, more than it is about it's been determined already. Their fan base is split in every different direction on those quarterbacks and how they view them a little bit.
Okay, so you think they rock with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy next year, and then they just kind of see what happens?
I think that's the likely way that does play out. Yeah. Let them have a training camp battle, and then whoever wins. And
All right. Well, that's that thing you said about Purdy's arm, not having a real NFL arm, not having a very live arm. That's going to come into play big time this weekend because we've got a rainstorm on our hands. I've heard some people call it a cyclone, but mostly when I've looked it up, I've heard it's going to just be rain, not a ton of wind, but a quarterback like a Brock Purdy, you get him in those kind of conditions, it's going to be a struggle to get the ball more than 12 yards down the field, probably, right? So we're getting Ryan Neal back this week. That's a big one right there. We're getting Ryan Neal back, our strong safety who's played at a really high level this year. We put an 8 in the box the whole game, just letting Quandre Diggs protect everything deep, and then trying to see if he can fit the ball into tighter windows with 8 guys around the line of scrimmage. What do you think?
I had nine specific keys that I kind of unveiled yesterday on my show, on my channel there. And that was the number one key at the start of it. The beginning place that you begin for this Niner team to win this week. I don't think you have to have all 9 of those things go right to win this game, but I think you got to get 7 of 9. You got to be in that territory with this good Niner team. But that is indeed the place that I think that you begin with here. Before offense, before anything else, you commit to stacked fronts, commit to the 8th man in the box. Make this guy throw 9 routes down the football field. If you think about it, Brendan, I was thinking about this today, and I think it's a good thing in one respect, but it's a bit of a double-edged sword and bad. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts as well. I think we've had more times this year, or more infrequent times this year, that we have seen a 9 route completed over the top of the Seahawks defense than any time in probably the last 7 years. Does that seem fair to you?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. Yeah.
And that's a good thing. It is a good thing, Brandon, but it's also indicative of the fact that we play such a protectionist attitude towards the deep side of the field with your cover 2s and your cover 3s and your cover 4s and everything about that depth and getting to that depth and having your coverage there to take away that deep stuff. This is a week you got to flip that to me. This is a little bit of a week of let it all hang out. Don't worry about him. Test him. Make him throw you that. And if we get to the end of this game, Brendan, and Brock Purdy's hit 3-9 routes in this game for 120 yards on those 3 throws, and he put them right on the dot in a game where it's raining, I'll go, okay, you beat us, but at least we didn't let you beat us with your strength. At least we forced your limitation to beat us, and he rose to the occasion and did so. I can feel fine about that from a tactical standpoint. But indeed, you touched on the point with it. If I've got a 95 mile an hour fastball as a quarterback and I'm in the rain, and that rain knocks that down to 88, 87, hey, I still got an 87 mile an hour fastball. If I've got an 83 mile an hour fastball and that rain's knocking it down to a 72, it's a little bit of a difference there on what that means when you talk about pushing a ball up the football field, especially when you're talking about trying to fit it in tight windows. And this, the other thing about that is that in rainy conditions, those receivers aren't getting as much separation. They don't have the ability to get those feet put down and planted as much to get free and open. So there's even less of those windows opened up. Those arm limitations then again start to grow a little bit wider in these type of football games.
Right. And this game is going to be all about those conditions, I think. And one kind of phrase that I've started to use as we get closer to this game is embrace the chaos.
That's right.
Because in these conditions, you should have a little bit of chaos, right? Like people falling down, people dropping the ball without getting hit. All that kind of stuff should be happening. So a little bit of chaos is good when you're a 10-point underdog.
They call it order out of chaos. That's what they call, and that's the application here. It's order out of chaos. It looks like everything's frenzied in every direction, but it's absolutely on purpose in the grand scheme of things. And I couldn't be more in agreement with you,
Right. Daniel Bailey, thank you for the $2. We'll bring Purdy down to earth like Mike White.
Let's go.
I could definitely see him looking like Mike White in this game for multiple reasons. Our pass rush is also playing probably its best football of the year these last 2 games. So if we carry that over a little bit, combined with everything else, you got something.
You do. You feel real good where the edge play is at right now. Obviously, Taylor stepped up. Maffe's been kind of slowly coming to life a little bit as a pass rusher on top of what he's done as an edge defender in the run. And I think Irvin, if you can fit him into that role of rotational guy in there to kind of sprinkle him in, everybody stays nice and fresh enough in a way that you couldn't apply in the second game, for instance, you can apply here. I like what we could bring with the pass rush on this, but this does come down to, again, taking away then that short stuff. That's the thing I like about the stack fronts, Brendan, is not only does it set the stage for you to show blitz fronts and confuse the quarterback, not knowing who's coming and who isn't, but then it also then post snap, immediately you can drop into your short zones and set the stage right out the jump there for him to have to more press the ball up the football field and take more of those whole shot type throws. By doing that. And so it's sort of like, to me, accomplishes kind of 2 different points of purpose. So the tough thing with the Mike White comparison, I do think we can absolutely bring Purdy down the same way we did with White. Of course, though, with Mike, we have to acknowledge he was saying that he was playing with like 7 broken ribs or something like that.
Yeah.
So, he was definitely dealing with some, I don't think Purdy's got any broken joints down there in the,
he was injured at one point this year, but he should be okay now, right? I remember he was on the injury report when we played them.
Yeah, he was. So maybe you never know. It's always hard to, this time of year, guys, everybody's dealing with, a little bit of something, with that. Nobody's 100%, even guys like Purdy that have only played maybe 5 or 6 games. You've been hit somewhere or somehow or something. So, he's probably sore, but he absolutely is in that same mode where you can bring this guy's nothing special in that respect. I know he's had a great run here and props to him for that. But this is a stacked Niner team. It's not necessarily him doing that as much as he's making the right choices, but it's Shanahan and this offense they build and everything else. So make him uncomfortable, Brendan. You've got to make a rookie quarterback uncomfortable. You can't let him sit back there and just, I got all the time in the world. I'm just going to kind of survey the field. Maybe I'll sit back here in my lounge chair for a second, a little sip. No, you got to come on, make him uncomfortable. And again, if the play breaks, if they get a play, then so be it. We were playing protectionist coverage in the last game. As Carroll referenced, those 2 big plays in the last game that caused you to get beat. Yeah, were you in a high blitz look in those situations, Brendan? Were you bringing the house on those 2 plays that caused that broken coverage? No, right? No, you're playing your soft protectionist zone coverage, and it still got beat deep.
Yeah.
So, and I know I say that saying there aren't a lot of 9 routes complete on us, but again, go for it in this week. We need every oar in the water. We can't, and again, you got to play to win this game, Brendan. We got to apply the Detroit Lion methodology to this, like they did with the shoots and ladder play and the going for it on 4th down and throwing it. And, you got to do that here, man. This is what this is going to take. You have that same kind of spirit if you're going to win this game.
Right. And I'm really hoping that we remember to blitz Kobe Bryant a couple times in this game because it seems like that's working.
Mm-hmm.
It worked really well in this last Rams game. You got to send that. I know Ryan Neal got back, but I want to see Jonathan Abram on the field a little bit doing some blitzing of his own. I want to see some Jordan Brooks blitzing, all these guys who seem fairly effective when they blitz, but we just don't use it that much now.
Cody Barton.
Yeah, maybe Cody Barton too.
You said Jordan Brooks though, because Jordan Brooks is out.
Oh shoot, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant Cody Barton. My bad. But yeah, I want to see us throw stuff at him, and if he beats it, that's okay. But let's get a little creative here. It's one of those games where you really wish you had Jamal Adams, and there were some people this week I was talking to who were really. I think Jamal posted something on Instagram that made people think, oh, he's going to come back this week, but no, not yet. But you got to emulate that.
Yeah, it would great if you had him back at this game. It would be awesome. I think he looked. I think back to that second game you played against the Niners last year, where he really did lock up Kittle, and then he was a force in the running game. Maybe one of his better games played as a Hawk here. And so I would love to have him. It sucks that you don't, but yeah, let Neal get down there. I like your idea of Abram, especially if you can bring Abram in situations where it's going to be a running play or a high likelihood of a running play. Bring him down there as one of those guys in the box. I absolutely wouldn't mind. And they've done some of this, Brendan, with how they took the flip of Abram and teased Tabor. Because you look at Tabor, right, and that PFF score, where it's like, ooh, high PFF score. And then you go, oh, wait, no, he only had 7 snaps. But then you go, oh, wait, 6 of the snaps were in pass coverage, though. So the coaching staff is trying to flip those 2 safeties back and forth a little bit there in order to get the best player for the given situation. I love that because that's been something that I think Carroll's sometimes been hesitant to do in the past. If you're the starter, you're out there, right? You're going to just be that guy in that role. So do more of that in this game. I think that would be smart.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Benson DeWalt, thank you for the $4.99. What a unique season to remember. I ain't mad at it. Looking forward to the draft episodes from you two. Go Hawks.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go Hawks.
I've been kind of scheduling out my draft coverage. Now, granted, we won't really be able to start it until after the season's over, so we don't know exactly when we're going to start it. I don't want to start talking about the draft 24/7 when we still have games to play. Yeah, but there's going to be a lot.
Oh yeah, we're going to go cover end to end on this one, Benson. We're going to dive deep into this draft. You better believe it on both our channels. So it's coming. The draft season's coming. But thank you. It's been a great season, Benson. Nothing like it as a Hawk fan that I've ever experienced either. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for people to also remember we got to get through free agency first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because what we do in free agency has a downstream effect on what you do in the draft for sure. Like if we sign Daron Payne, Jalen Carter becomes, I think, a little less interesting.
He does. Or like last year, if you had taken Dwayne Brown and brought him back, are you taking Charles Cross with the first pick at number 9, last year in the free agency? So you're right. If free agency does, you would think, well, no, it doesn't because you're still going to pick the picks. Well, no, it's going to guide you. It guides every team. Even the team's driven by best player available methodology. So we'll have to wait a little bit on that. We'll probably be a little more locked in on first as the season ends with the Benson just doing the review stuff on this year and then going to that free agency and then it gets to draft. But we will be absolutely, as soon as we can, we'll be diving in that pool. I'll make you do a cannonball in that pool, Brennan.
Yeah. Believe me, I'm ready to throw myself into it. I already have started. The process has already begun.
It has begun.
Ryan Guffey, thank you for the $5 super chat. This season was already a success. Knocking out the Niners and watching the media meltdown ensue just sounds so very sweet. Oh yeah.
I just want to see it. So I kind of wanted a little bit at the end of as the Lions won. I was like, I'd kind of like tonight. And I wanted the Niners a couple weeks ago. I wanted another crack at them, but oh my goodness. That's like cherries on cherries on cherries on this Sunday of a season to be able to then go and take the Niners out and watch that fan base. I mean, they're talking about like having a slip and slide like approach downhill with rocket boosters on their back, by how easy they're considering their pathway through the National Football Conference to the Super Bowl this year. They are all talking just like that. I mean, if there isn't a fan base more ripe right now to get knocked off their high horse and be brought back down with a sense of realism about how hard it is to go out there and win Lombardi trophies, they're due for it, I tell you.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I mean, I do agree with the sentiment though that either way this season is a success. And I'm,
100%.
I was thinking about this earlier. If last year's team had backed into the playoffs like we did with like a 9-8 record and then gotten, lost in the first round, that would have felt like a waste of time. That would have felt like a completely different thing. This year, this is more like just getting to this point and getting all these. We have so many players on this team that have no playoff experience, have never played in a playoff game. And it's going to be tremendously beneficial. And that was not the case last year. We barely played any rookies last season. I remember kind of doing a study of it. Like the number of snaps we gave to young players was like this.
Mm-hmm.
So, those kinds of things just make the feeling completely different.
Well, and I say it's that difference of when you're in your window and when you're out of it. We were supposed to theoretically still be in our window last year. We may be at the end of that window, and that's as it turned out. The window was slamming shut. It was like you had the crack open at the start, and then just closed out to the rest of it by the end of it. But that was your end, and so they were operating more as you operate within that window. But you're absolutely right. That's why you feel even more. Not just hopeful, but enjoying this season and really appreciating this season because you've accomplished this starting 6 rookies. As you have $44 million of dead money, 20% of your cap off your books. You're not doing this season with all guns go. Everybody's rolling. We're all in. Oh, we have. We're sacrificing future draft capital for this year right now. I mean, even last year you were still doing that, right, Brendan? Because you had the Jamal Adams first round pick still on and due. So you come out of that playoffs and you're like, okay, we got the playoffs. We got no first round pick because this is Jamal Adams deal, but he's topped us out. We're not really a Super Bowl perennial contending team, so it's right for both standpoints to think both ways, but also so great because this team totally embraced Brendan the rebuild. Totally went, okay, we're not in our window. So rather than get caught in that in-between thing like I've talked about, they went, no, go to rebuild. They pivoted, they churned. And that's what smart organizations do when they recognize that the window's shut, as they did. Unlike the Saints in making their first round trade for Trevor Penning. And so, it makes this such a different viewpoint in how you look at this because of the fact that the success has happened as it has, and this team is in the place they're in.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I notice looking around the NFL sometimes. There's a lot of denial with franchises about where they really are. A lot of unwillingness to accept reality. Like we talked about this last stream, but the Packers with Aaron Rodgers, he asked out and they were like, no, we love you. Please come back. We'll give you all the money. We'll give you whatever you want. And now he's had one mediocre year where the team didn't make the playoffs and now he might retire and you get nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why were you in denial about the fact that it was obviously time to move on?
Yeah.
That Falcons team after the Super Bowl loss, so many opportunities to blow it up. They just kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And by the time they did, they'd wasted time and they didn't get a ton of value out of it. So it is, I like it. I like it when organizations are a little more realistic about where they are and do not live in denial like that.
Do you buy into that? It's my working theory, of course, of those 4 places that a team basically can be in, which is, rebuild, ascent, you're in your elite Super Bowl contending window, or you're in between. And it's the in between teams that you're talking about that I offer reference. That's the worst place to be as an NFL franchise because it perpetuates and is self-perpetuating. It lasts years and years. It isn't a one problem mistake. It's a philosophy mindset stake of the organization that causes you for years to keep failing and breaking and going wrong because you think you're just this close to getting there. I think it's doubly wrong on the Packers side. Let me offer onto that as well, by the way, because first I want to say, what do you think on my theory with that? Do you buy into that?
Oh yeah. The 4 teams,
Yeah.
the 4 stages. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you have, rebuilding us. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what another stage could be. In fact, I almost wonder if you could, well, I think part of the problem is they've seen too many teams skip that second phase
Mm-hmm.
where they go from like rebuilding to Super Bowl, like in
Yeah.
one off season. Like The Eagles with Carson Wentz kind of did that. The year before they
Yeah.
won the Super Bowl, they were a 6-win team. I think that's why these teams live in denial sometimes. But yeah, I do agree with your general sentiment.
And I think with your point on the Packers is right. Don't you think is also in addition to that, because remember what I talk about is if you are that elite team, you need to then know that now the time is to strike. It's not going to last for a long period of time, and the NFL goes quick. So while you're in your window, you need to go. That's why I supported the Rams making a move like Von Miller last year. Or even though with McCaffrey was a high price, at least I could support the Niners doing what they did there because they are in that window. Would you say that the Packers made that same recognition of what they had with Rodgers over the last couple of years in the MVP seasons that he's had, understanding we got to strike now. It's hot.
Yeah, that's kind of almost like another side of that, denial of where you are as a team. You're right. It's like you're always just trying to stay on this even keel. You're always just trying to hope that you just hang out and eventually things will just kind of go your way. It
Yeah.
is. It's kind of almost like it shows that while the Packers were unwilling to do this and just go down, they were also unwilling to really go up. They just kind of want to hang out in the middle where they sell out every home game and they can raise the prices on tickets every year.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand the Packers don't have an owner that is, counting pennies like that.
Well, not necessarily, but look, they're not a cash rich organization. And we've talked about this, how this works with signing contracts and free agents. You need money. And so I think your point's right. I think the making sure they have that thing filled and they'll have that thing always sold out. I think no matter but they don't want to they don't want to get to a bad state where they're not either. Cause then the money really dries up because they got to rely on that ticket gate. I'm guessing, they don't have those loose pockets, billionaire pockets, other organizations like the Rams have.
Right. But, yeah, I mean, I remember a couple years ago. Well, yeah, 2 years ago when the Patriots had that 6-win season when they were starting like Cam Newton and when Cam got hurt, they had a couple other really bad guys. And, Belichick just kind of came out at the end of the year and was like, well, what did you expect? We have no money. There was nothing we could do. Of course we suck.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like this, it's completely different from how Pete would have dealt with a season like that after the run that Belichick had.
Yeah.
It was very real. He was just like, of course we're bad. I signed Cam Newton off the junk heap. Of course we were going to be bad. What did you guys think? It's like that willingness to accept reality, I think is really nice. And it's really important for these organizations to have. Sometimes they don't.
No, they don't. And all the reasons that you just brought up as to what can cause them to get kind of lost in their process of that. But as I get along with this and try to analyze this further along, the more years go by, it does seem like that just becomes more and more the big problem that I never considered back in the past, that as I look at it now, becomes more and more the issues. You look through these leagues and the bad decisions that are made, usually you can track it back to a team that's actually in between that thinks it's an elite squad. And you can kind of backtrack. And as good as the Packers have been, you can make the argument that absent Aaron Rodgers, the fact you're playing in that division like they played in and had some of the, easier kind of schedules they've had to kind of go through to get themselves that division and play as well as they have through the last few years. Maybe there's been some benefit of that, in that you're not that good and that's artificially bumped you up a little bit higher than you were. And you were a little maybe closer to the in-between. Or, Brendan, they needed to make that aggressive trade, which is what I would have said. Like, you need to go out and make a couple of those aggressive trades to sacrifice some of that future. You need to not draft your quarterback of the future in the first round. Go get your guy another first round receiver, right? But that's where the Packers will be picking that one over, I think, for years to come, Brendan, and looking at and kicking themselves in the butt going, we really did this wrong on a couple of different levels.
Yeah. Who's the Packers GM these days, by the way? I don't even know.
Gutekunst.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. I'm not familiar with that name. I must have just not looked at it recently, huh? How long has he been there?
4 years. 4 or 5 years, I think.
So it's been a pretty good run. I mean, they've done nothing but win 14 games a year since he got there. But I think they handled the Rodgers thing terribly.
They absolutely handled it terribly. I would say that draft that they have, I look back of, and Jordan Love and AJ Dillon. And Dillon, I think had to give a 3rd round pick to go up and get in the 2nd round. That's the first 2 picks in the draft where your quarterback needs no more ammunition. Give him a Rodgers like plethora of guys around to throw to and work at the ball to. They made a choice not to do that. They already had Aaron Jones. There was not a pathway for AJ Dillon to even be running back one. Yeah, he's a hammer to Jones's lightning, but they overinflated him. Boston College tape on Dillon wasn't that great. I don't know if you remember watching him. It wasn't that great. It wasn't 2nd round great. He doesn't look like Charbonnet. Charbonnet is going to go in the 2nd round of this draft out of UCLA. Dylan didn't look as good as him on his college tape, yet he's going to go in the same place that Charbonnet went. And that draft by the Packers, who are usually pretty smart in their draft, to me was just like, to me, they were just doing subtle signs throughout this whole thing to me, Brendan. That was like, yeah, why don't you maybe go? Why don't you maybe go, Aaron? Why don't you go? Yeah. MVP. Okay. Yeah, good. How about you go? Like it was kind of like a little middle finger to him. It felt like a little bit at the time when they did it. And then even this offseason with not going out there and getting a tried and true wide receivers on the outside or a tight end, a playmaking tight end on the inside. It all was another like seemingly, I don't know if he's just maybe that much of a pain in the butt in the background to deal with, but it did seem like a double finger middle salute to Aaron on both of those kind of choices to me, which maybe it wasn't, maybe it was their process, but your process is dumb if that's how that's guiding you through.
I mean, I feel like if you feel that way about Aaron, just get rid of him. Just trade him.
Right. If you're going to make a first round quarterback with a guy like that, just move then, be consistent in your thinking, right? We go halfway. No, we don't want to do it. Yes, we do. No, we don't. Yes, we do. No, we don't. That's what that looks like on the outside in. And you never want to be accused of that as an organization, but that's very clear as to what happened there. And then he surprised him and he was still an MVP and they're like, wow, he's still good. We thought he was going to be about done. Boy, we miscalculated this one. Okay, now pivot. You miscalculated. Now pivot. Instead, it was a scrambling panic kind of thing going on.
Daniel Bailey, thank you for the $5. I was delusional this offseason thinking we could sneak into the playoffs. Still here delusional thinking we can beat the Niners. Go Hawks.
Hey, go Hawks, Daniel. Go Hawks. You ain't delusional, brother. You're thinking free and clear. Like I was saying yesterday on this, Brendan, with my channel on this, all these folks nationally, Brendan, all these Niner fans right now chirping up about the fact that we got no chance this week. All of them with their big talk, big old talk. Same exact people to a man that said this whole offseason we had no chance at the playoffs. Had no chance. And you and I both were very even keeled on it with our 7-win approach, but we didn't do 3 wins. We didn't go 2 wins. We weren't on board with that.
Yeah, I never believed that.
We never believed that. And so, these same people that are going to inform us this offseason about how trash we are, how about dead and gone we are, how about they just bury that Seahawks team for 2022, put them 6 feet under, maybe they'll be back in 5 years. All those same people with that big, tough talk in the offseason about what that was going to be and how the season was going to go for us are the same people now saying we're going to get boat raced by the 49ers this Saturday. Sorry if I don't believe them. Sorry if I don't buy their analytical approach to this one. I don't think that they've rationally exactly broken this down. I think they've taken a lazy affair, Niners been good so far. I mean, Seahawks suck. Because that's where they started out from. And people can rarely kind of move off their spot with stuff.
Right. So going back to the Niners offense, I think that, maybe the biggest weakness on even the whole team, I look at that interior offensive line. You've got Aaron Banks, who's been okay. Jake Brendel has been okay. And Spencer Burford, I think he's a rookie from, I think he might have even played at UTSA with Tariq Woolen, has been bad. So I look at that and I kind of go, that's a place to attack. And then I look at the way Quentin Jefferson's been playing the last 3 games. Hair on fire. He's got like 8 QB pressures in the last 3 games combined. He's just going off.
Yeah.
So that might be the area where you might be able to win some battles on one-on-one. I think that, you can crowd the area around the line of scrimmage, maybe do a little bit better against the run than you have been lately. That the conditions are going to kind of, I think, zap McCaffrey's speed. So I'm not that worried about him just hitting a hole and blowing his way to the end zone in a flash.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the rain will equalize that element of it a little bit. But in terms of an actual weakness with this roster, I'm looking at this interior offensive line and I'm thinking there could be some damage done there.
Yeah, I think on the inside, you can definitely maybe make some hay there with it. I think having the extra defender around the box gives you a little more versatility in how you play your gaps with the defensive lineman up front. And especially when you talk about how you're going to then defend maybe the stuff because of course the Niners, you got to worry about the stuff that's lateral as well as vertically what they're doing. So, how you're dealing with the fly sweeps, the bubble screens, the stuff where they're going to try to get their guys out in space and they're going to run pitch plays out there with McCaffrey too, no doubt about that, and Debo. But I think that's where the 8th man in the box gives you a little bit of that built-in flexibility, especially if you're committing to it as a sort of a standard of the day, where it's like, here's what we're running today. This is how we're going to run it, and we're going to be consistently within it. So you can really get to some, I think, nuances within it, how you want to play it on them and up front, and maybe running some games with that as far as that goes too. But look, as much as bringing the eighth man in the box goes, Brendan, these guys are going to have to get their job done up front too. They're going to have to maintain their gap integrity. You mentioned these guys aren't the greatest up front in the middle. The tackles are pretty good, but the inside, this is where you can get a little bit to them. So you're not having some guy up against you that's Quentin Nelson. You don't have Zach Martin across from you in this particular game if you're a defensive lineman here. You've got a matchup that you should be able to win and have take the better advantage of in that. Even a guy with like Banks, like you said, who's been a little bit up and down. His forte is run blocking, where you really get into him as a pass protector. But that's where we get back to forcing Purdy to beat you, forcing the Niners to throw the more than they want to throw the ball, forcing guys like Banks to then have to go into his weakness, which is pass protection, and then taking advantage of that.
Right. Yeah. And what you're trying to really avoid here is a situation where the 49ers just feel like they can run the ball the whole game, kind of like what the Panthers did.
Right.
Where they just got ahead and then like they could just tell Darnold, don't do anything. Just run the same play over and over again. It's still going to work.
I'd say Falcons game, Buccaneers game, Raiders game, the very much similar kind of stages as that one too. And that's where your worry's got to be coming into this game. And I would reckon, Brendan, those games you didn't commit to putting the eighth man in the box, all the much more reason why, when you got a devastating running team like the Niners here with this, you've got to kind of almost do that by necessity more than you do it by like, well, it'd be just a nice wrinkle to run in there. It's like, when there's maybe more of just what you got to do against this type of team.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit more about our defense now because, and this obviously pertains to this game specifically, but I'm thinking about the linebacker core in this game. You're going to have Barton and you're going to have Tanner Muse. That might be one of the fastest, if not the fastest linebacker duo in the league, right? Like Cody Barton is really fast for a linebacker and Tanner Muse is a safety, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He can move.
So I kind of talked about this a little bit last time we streamed, but I want to go a little deeper into this. Is it just kind of the wave of the future to have smaller linebackers now? These guys who are like 225, maybe 230, and they're just fast and they can go sideline to sideline compared to a guy like a Jordan Brooks who's a little bit heavier, Jordan Brooks is fast too, but it's a different kind of thing where he's not really, it feels like he doesn't have the agility to, for instance, be good in coverage. So what I'm really trying to get to here is Tanner Muse. I've always operated under the belief that he's too small to play inside linebacker in the NFL. But do you think we're moving away from that?
I think the NFL is starting to get more and more to lighter linebackers. I do. I think that, some of it is that you usually, ideally, if you're going to do that, you're going to want to have protection up front, that's the problem with this a little bit is you don't have as much of the protections for these guys that are lighter right now, which does expose you a little bit. But if you can get the guys up front that command the double teams, that you can't afford to take a guy. And, my reference for this has always been, Ray Lewis, Ray Lewis comes into his career and starts out and he's got two big boys, former Seahawks top 10 pick, Sam Adams, the Ravens pluck from us there. And, the Italian guy that was always on the sideline, what was the name of the big fat guy that was on the sideline who died? Saragusa. So they stacked those two guys up in front of Lewis early in his career. Those guys, Brendan, were legitimately like 750 pounds combined, like of man, just man flesh down there in the front. And that kept Lewis clean to where he could really run around. And then those guys retired kind of right as he was at his peak of his career. He had a little bit of a dip. Here comes Haloti Ngata in there. Now he's back to commanding the double teams. Especially, again, that was a 3-4 defense those Ravens were running. That's why I make this same kind of comparison. So your Hawks do need a little protection up there, but you're absolutely right. Where the linebackers are getting lighter and it's becoming more accepted. There's still some of the big boy guys like the Zavin Collins type or the kid that the Washington football team drafted also, I think a year ago, pretty highly. I forget his name, but
yeah, I can't remember his name. I know who you're talking about.
He's kind of another one of more of the traditional sized guys, but look at this draft coming up. I mean, Trent Simpson's going to be a very controversial player who will maybe go in the first round and legitimately looks like he weighs probably 225. I don't think he's going to stack on another 15 pounds of muscle here to go to the pros. So he's going to probably play in 230, low 230-ish. Ivan Pace Jr., Cincinnati kid, kind of has like a Lofa Tatupu build. Another smaller guy out there. Now there's the Jack Campbells and Drew Sanders too, man, but then there's a Henry Toa, right? Alabama. He looks that guy looks really slight, doesn't he? He looks like a safety.
I think Drew Sanders is actually 225 right now. I could be wrong.
Oh, is he? I'm thinking of it. I was thinking of him 6'3", so that might be right. He's a taller guy, but he might be more of a kind of a skinnier beanpole kind of a build to him a bit. But to your point, a lot of guys in this draft that are going to be picked in those first 3 rounds at that size. Toa, Pace, Simpson. I mean, there's a good couple of guys there that will be selected that are a little of the smaller variety. It's not going to shy NFL teams away. They need that speed on the football field.
Right, because when I was watching some college football this year, one guy I was watching a little bit was a Sewell in Oregon, and he's a bigger guy, but it's just not like it just he looks like almost an undersized defensive tackle. He just looks so slow. He's lumbering, and I kind of look him up, and it's like he's not even that heavy. It's not like he's 280 or something.
No,
but it still just looks so slow.
I think it's a little bit like the Jordan Brooks thing you brought up, where you get the straight line movements good, but if they've got to go side to side, stop, start, right, and do that stuff, it just completely becomes different from the straight line kind of speed. It all becomes really clunky and out of whack and doesn't make sense. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that when you get a guy that's has a little bit of a heavier thing, you're getting the lighter guy, the more agile guy, and the guy that can bounce around and get to certain spots a little bit easier. And I think that stood out second matchup with the Niners when Brooks went out with that neck injury. Tanner Muse came in there and had a good 3-4 series in that game, and he outperformed Brooks in that game in those 3 or 4 series. And I think that was a little bit indicative of the fact maybe he can get to a little bit more of those wider stuff runs out there, and he certainly can do much better in coverage than Brooks when dropping back. It's kind of like it comes back to like the evaluation of a Brooks type player, man. And I, it's like I went on a Niners channel and asked him this question, and I asked you the same question where I said, if I told you I've got a guy that's a great run stuffing middle linebacker, who's average size, who's really fast, he can hit, he can tackle, but he is absolutely a cancer when it comes to coverage. What is that value in a draft? Where do you pick that guy in a draft, Brendan? As far as if you make your evaluation?
Like in the 4th round, maybe.
And see, it's like when I did the Jordan Brooks pick that night he was picked, in my early evaluations of him at Texas Tech, I had a 5th round grade on him. Because when I look at the modern NFL, and I think you're right, 4th round's probably being kinder than I was probably being a little bit hyperbolic, but when you're talking about the NFL and having simply a middle linebacker that's a one-trick run-stuffing middle linebacker, and I'd offer even at that, he's probably got some question marks, what is that value in the modern NFL versus a guy that can drop back in coverage? Because the guy that can't drop back in coverage is going to get exposed and he's going to get attacked. That's how Brooks ends up last year, giving up over 1,000 yards in coverage. I'm sure he's going to end up somewhere this year. The injury will probably help make it look a little bit better because he misses a few games maybe at the end of the year, but he's still going to be up at probably 600-700 yards that he gives up in coverage this year receiving. That's hard to do for the middle linebacker position. There's not a lot of guys.
Yeah, I have him at 750 right now.
So there we go. And last year he was at 1,000. And so if he had played those last few games, he'd be right up near where he was last year as being basically the worst linebacker in coverage in the entire NFL, which was pretty much where he was last year. And it's again, not to say he doesn't have skill, Brendan. He does. I don't want to pay Jordan that wood, but it's like, what is that value at that point? It's good to have that. It's nice to have the run stuffer, but its value has become diminished in the modern NFL, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Yeah. And all that being said, I have to acknowledge the fact that the Rams had some pretty good success running the ball on us on Sunday with Tanner Muse and Cody Barton in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make this work against this really, really good Niners rushing attack? Like is there anything you can see here that would allow us to really slow them down besides the weather?
4-300 defense.
A little late for that.
I know. Well, the stack, there's not a lot of other wrinkles outside the stack in the box and just committing to have guys down by the line of scrimmage. Seahawks are never going to run casino type action, right? Where you're going to bring Quandre and Ryan down, like an extra defender down. So you're not going to do that. Like you just mentioned, you're not going to go to the 4-3 under stuff, which I would love to see. I think that was at a big part of how you were able to slow down Shanahan's offenses in the recent 4 or 5 year period is having that defense out there. I understand why they can't. It's too late. I get all that, but I think you've got it to me, Brendan, on this come down to this, which is you put the stack fronts on there, and then from a complete philosophy approach, you say, okay, we're going to put our corners in positions where they're manned up and guys are going to have an opportunity to hit them up on 9 routes, and that they've got to hold up in that realm of things. And we're going to have to trust them to hold up in that realm of things. We're going to have to see if Brock can beat us on that. Asking a jump shooter to hit jump shots is what you need to make this 49er offense do. And so, I'd run those Stack fronts. We love our off coverage with our corners, right? We love to have the 8 yards off coverage and then drop into your bail technique. I might try to see if I can run a little bit of press looks at times in addition to those stack fronts, even just to show it. If you're not going to do it, just get Purdy thinking, vary it up, Brendan. Don't show the same thing over and over again. Try to throw different things at him. He's a rookie. Confuse him. They're easily confused. You do that with variance. You do that with disguise. You do that with some exotic nature, things that we don't tend to do, but we should do this week, which I think would then afford us some success, because you will, as my stat that I lie with them starting out 11 of 11 with you and your soft zone defense to begin the game last time we played them. The second that you got exotic, Brendan, the second you brought a blitz, oh, here's an incompletion. Oh, let's show another stack front after that incompletion. Oh, hey, look, there's another incompletion. So go back to that front. Go back to that film. It should be telling you this story very clearly if you're the Seahawks coaches.
Final point I want to make on this side of the ball before we move on to the really intimidating part of the Niners here with their defense. But I guess one thing that people are talking about a pretty good amount lately, and one thing that a lot of people are kind of hanging their hat on, was the previous time the Niners played in a rainstorm, which was way back in week 1 against the Chicago Bears, the worst team in the league, and the Niners lost that game. So I didn't watch that game. I was actually at the Mariners game that day. I did not get to watch that game. I know it was a rainstorm, but do you think there's anything we can learn from that game?
I think that just when you get the conditions where it's not merely raining like it was that first game in Chicago, but it's monsoon-like conditions, that's going to equalize everything very quickly. Even when there's a talent discrepancy as extreme as what you get between the Niners and the Bears. And we're obviously way better than the Bears are as far as from a talent standpoint. So it's one of the reasons why I say that I believe that this game will be a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. On top of the fact that we're playing loose and free, nothing to lose. I don't think there's a tightness you normally get with playoff teams with us going into San Francisco. The weather, I think, levels out that field a little bit. And you mentioned McCaffrey not getting up to speed. When you got that wet turf, it's like you can't get up to, the quick guys can't get up as quick. Debo's and McCaffrey's can't get there as fast. You're not able to make those sharp, precise cuts as much up the football field. And so it just kind of, everything just gets a little bit more dirtied up a little bit, which to me works in the Seahawks' favor. This is on a clean, neutral field with a pristine day and sunshine. I think it does help the Niners out and allowing their offensive attack to operate with a machine-like efficiency. I don't think you're going to be able to do that with this game. And so that first game for them, they were without Kittle. It was monsoon. I mean, it wasn't just rain. It was legit monsoon-like conditions there in Chicago. It's as bad as you can get. It's like the football will go up and then land in the turf and do one of those where it doesn't move when it hits the turf. It's so muddy and dirtied up. So it definitely impacted them. I don't think that they're a team though, Brendan. I think maybe within your question is, are they a team that somehow isn't good in the rain, or that's their hindrance? They did play in the rain against us in week 2. It wasn't that it was as bad as the conditions in Chicago, but there was some rain. So I don't think that it's going to do that, but I do think it does level. There's some talent difference here. I think it does kind of bring things a little bit more to an even state a little bit.
All right. So that's the Niners offense. Basically, stack the box with 8, throw some exotic blitzes at Purdy, and see what happens. Basically, just kind of throw it out there. And if the Niners bust like 10 80-yard touchdowns, then so be it.
So be it. Nobody's going to be mad about that. If you walk out of this game, Brendan, and Brock Purdy's throwing some dimes 50 yards down the field on you in a rainstorm, and your plan of attack was to force him to do that, is there one Seahawks fan that's squawking about that to me, who has been like, you should have just dropped in your normal cover 2 stuff, let him bleed you slow with the running game, slowly work you down. No, there's nobody that's going to be mad at that approach. It's aggressive. It's going for it. It's different than what you normally do. Niners are probably not going to expect it. It's outside of the box approach. We never like to do this type of stuff. So it's completely, as you said earlier, embrace the chaos. That's embracing the chaos, to go left when you always go right. And not only do you always go right, Brendan, you always go right. You never blitz. You don't do those stack fronts. You're into the cover 2 looks with this Fangio stuff this year. It would be in wide deference to what you've done. The Niners have not been seeing it on tape a lot. So again, high likelihood that you could then kind of catch them off guard with it if you did try to bring it out there.
Okay, so I think that sums it up pretty well. Now let's get over to this Niners defense. And this is just, it's hard to figure out what you're going to do here. It's hard to piece together how you're going to produce against this unit, because like we said 2 days ago, this is the best defense in the league, and it might not be that close at this point. So, I mean, about the best I can say is their interior of their defensive line. They've got Kinlaw playing significant snaps right now, and he's basically their LJ Collier. He's not good. Really liked that guy in the draft, by the way. Just
I did
put
too,
that out
man.
there.
I
Mhm.
did too. I
Yeah,
was with you on that one. That's a miss for
yeah.
me.
But they are getting, I think, Kevin Givens back. He's a rotational piece for them. Other than that, man, I mean, the edge with Ebukam and Armstead and Bosa, it's brutal. They're all three of their linebackers really seem like they're playing really well. They got great safety play with Gibson and Hafanga. Like, what
Fonga's come down to earth a little bit.
little
Started out
bit,
like
yeah, I
he
have
started
noticed that.
bad out of hell, but he's definitely, you can get him on aggressiveness. That's why I mentioned that. He's super
Yeah,
hyper aggressive. So you can get him kind of baiting on that. Sorry to interrupt you on that though. Keep going.
no problem. But okay, what do we do? What is the recipe here, knowing we're playing in a rainstorm?
There's a couple different things we apply here, Brendan. Number one, you've got to commit to remaining balanced, even if it's painful. You can't get into trying to be pass happy against this front. You can't let them have the opportunity to pin their ears back and not have to have a measure of like, is it a run first before I can go? You got to keep that there, even if you're only getting 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Walker's got to go down and get the 3 dirty yards in this game. No dancing. You got to put it up in there. We need to get ourselves into 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 5s, not 3rd and 11s, not 3rd and 10s. We need to get in those 3rd and 5s that are more makeable and convertible in these kind of conditions. The place where you can hammer this Niner defense from a schematic styling that we haven't talked about a lot in this realm that does help with a guy like Walker is that they do tend to run a wide 9 technique with their defensive linemen, which is more of an expanded defensive line technique, right? Where you have the defensive ends on the outside shoulders of the tackle, and sometimes the defensive tackles then widened out a little bit as well. Natural gaps are then sometimes built from that. But they're able to overcome that and be a great run stuffing team, of course, because their linebackers clean up a lot of stuff and they've got really good defensive linemen that understand how to keep their space clear. Still, with a quick back like Walker, who can get to the hole really quick, and with those natural cushions already built in there, you don't have a guy to have to hold on with his block for long then with this kind of front that you're dealing with. So that is a way, if you stay committed to running the ball and just hit those holes for what they are, you can kind of make some hay a little bit through over the course of the game, I think, with that, even if you're not getting the 5 yards per carry kind of approach to things. You know what I mean, Brendan, as far as that goes. So I think that's first. The other thing that was a big part of my key on this one, Brendan, and I know we ran 2 trick plays in the first game. Okay. I know that is, you got to go back to trick play city, because I mentioned Hufanga is playing super aggressively. This Niner defense plays super aggressively. What they do is what you get is what they show you is what you get. This is not a lot of defenses is like, hey, we're a lot like the old school Hawks. You know, you're going to see pretty simple stuff. We're just going to play it hard. And we're going to play it well. And we're going to rally to the ball and we're going to fly around and we're going to be fast. But with that, those kind of defenses, you get them moving away a little bit too hard one direction. You catch them back the other way. So what do trick plays do inherently is that, like, let's say a flea flicker, I give it to the running back. He's going to the hole. The flow of the defense instantly goes there. He goes back to the quarterback. You've got the open guy up the football field. So I know it didn't work with DJ Dallas doing it, but Brendan, that's not what I'm talking about, right? I don't want a running back throwing down by the goal line. That's ridiculous. But the play to DK Metcalf that worked on the throwback pass in the first game, that would have worked if the lineman hadn't taken another step or two forward. Go back and do that again. Take advantage of that, especially again with DK, who's not going to get single coverage opportunities. He's getting the double teams rolling over the top. That's a way to get you the single opportunity because the safety is going to come help in the run game on those kind of like a flea flicker like plays or path throwback plays like that one was. So I would try all of that across the board as a kind of an approach offensively. I'm not saying you're going to score a lot of points with it, but I think you'll eke out enough. You'll be more consistent than you've been in the first 2 matchups this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like we were talking about throwing the kitchen sink out there on defense, you still got to do it on you got to do it on offense too, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This, like I said, best defense in the league. This offense, while it was good overall this year, was not very good over the last half of the season. You got to find something here, and obviously you're a little undermanned. You don't have your number 3 receiver, you don't have your number 2 tight end, who was maybe your number 1 tight end with how much he played. He actually got slightly more snaps than Fant.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do at running back? Because Dallas is questionable. Homer's out. Penny's out. we got Walker. He's ready to go. That's great. That's awesome. But I'm not seeing the obvious number 2 behind him. So what do you think is going to happen there?
I think I think Walker's going to have 30 carries in this game. He's going to have to carry a huge load. They'll probably manage it when they're passing situations to take him off the field to give him a blow in that moment. But you're not going to want to be giving whoever they've got as far as, are they going with Gallman or are they going with the what was his name?
Was it Jones?
Jones? Are they going with Tony Jones instead on that then? If it's not Homer, Homer's out for sure, huh?
He's on IR. I don't think he can even come back, even if he was healthy.
Wow. Okay. Well, interesting. Get Marshawn in there. It's called Marshawn. He's ready. He can
Almost.
Come on. I mean, Brennan, I know I joke on this, but if I'm saying Tony Jones or Marshawn Lynch, are you really going Tony Jones? If Marshawn called you up right now, he's like, Brennan, yo, I'm ready to go. What do you say? Would you be like, oh, Marshawn, you've been retired a couple of years. You're not as good as Tony Jones at this point. Or would you go Am I being crazy? I'd probably be a little crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what's he been doing lately is the question, right? It seems like he's pretty happy in retirement, so I don't know about all that. Yeah. I'd rather give Adrian Peterson a call. He's probably still in shape. He's waiting for somebody.
I do that too. I just wonder, I guess my bottom line is Tony Jones is the best option in a playoff game that you can get on the street. Maybe it is. And maybe it's just that you're too far past at this point. So, but Walker's going to have to get a lot of carries in this game. That's the bottom line on that one. You've got to commit to the running the game. A big key for me in this game, Brendan, is that you've got to keep the time of possession near equal. You don't have to win it, but you got to have it near equal. In the first game, you had almost a 2-to-1 time of possession. Last game, you were down 6 minutes in the time of possession mark. Your defense wore down in both of those two contests. Your offense has got to sustain some drives, and that's going to have to begin with you running the ball rather than just trying to throw it all over the field.
Yeah. So other than that stuff you're talking about with the balance, with the trick plays, the one guy on this Niners defense who seems like is somebody you can actually like pick on a one-on-one basis, not just like, oh, you got to outsmart them. You can just outplay them, would be their second cornerback, Lenore. It seems like he's kind of the black sheep along with Kinlaw on this defense. And Kinlaw is easy to disguise because that defensive line is so good overall. Mm-hmm. But Lenore, what are we going to do about him? He seems like the one guy on this defense you could really just go at.
Well, you got Lockett, and Lockett's definitely going to be the attacking guy on that, I think, over there, where you're probably going to see Lockett featured quite a bit in this game. The double teams roll over to DK. Lockett gets a singled up over on that side. First game, it felt like we worked a lot of Lockett on those out routes. I'd expect Lockett has about 5 catches on out routes here, where he gets off coverage from Lenore, works it up, hits it at the seam, goes to the out. Geno throws it right on time. Boom. So you're probably gonna get 4 or 5 of those routes. That'll mean the main thing they probably really lean on, but that's where you attack it with Tyler and try to work that as much as you can with Tyler to make it go there. Would be where I would lean into. Again, especially because I think those doubles are going to go to her. They're not going to let DK, I don't think, beat him. They did in the last matchup, and I don't think they're on this one either.
Yeah. It seems like pretty much every team's kind of figured out it's just easier to double Metcalf.
Yeah. Just let's make someone else beat us. They've made that choice week in and week out. I watch the All-22, Brendan. It's week in and week out. You see it. It's snap after snap. You're watching it roll his way. It's not even a cover 2, right? Like, so cover 2, you have the 2 high safeties, and then the snap, the cover 2s, the safeties go like this, like they drop to the depth, like it would be like like there was an arrow going that way, but it goes like that towards DK on their cover 2 drops when he's to their side of the field, normally like this, and it's more of a direct path, get to him quick kind of thing. Which is interesting. He's kind of unusual in the way that he draws that double in that fashion of it. But yeah, you got to go back to Tyler then. If they're going to open that up, that means there's space for Tyler on the other side of it. Tight ends, Brendan, you got to work your tight ends here as well in this game. I know that Fred Warner's probably maybe potentially the best covered middle linebacker in the sport. Greenlaw is not chopped liver, but you do it well. We got to bring back the bootlegs with Geno.
Yeah,
especially early on, the short passes with Geno early on. I don't want him starting out this game, Brendan, trying to throw a 15-yard hole shot. He's obviously shown that's not his best. He's a little jumpy, maybe nerves up a little bit. Get him some easy throws here to start this off, even if they're 3-yard completions, right? This is really to me about the offense generating positive plays in this game, Brendan. When you look at this Niner team in the first two matchups, too many situations of you first and second down getting nothing done, ending up in third down. And now that deadly pass rush gets to be maximum overdrive. And we've got to keep that engine revving low. And the way you do that is that threat of that rushing attack always being there. And that's getting into more of second and short and third short opportunities. So that's really all the way around from running game to passing. That's where I think a big part of the success can come from. You're going to have to kind of grind it out, commit to grinding it out though. You keep the time of possession right. You control the clock. You keep your defense fresh. I think you'll also score some points, or at least enough points on the other side of it at that point.
Right. I almost kind of feel like maybe balance isn't even the right word. I wouldn't be angry if we ran the ball twice as much as we passed it with these conditions, with the way Geno's been playing. Even if it ends up in a game where like you only grind out maybe 13 or 14 points.
Yeah,
which that's possible.
Yeah,
like I get it. In this situation, I get it.
Yeah, and Geno's got to use his legs too, right? 55 yards rushing last week. Big part of what we did offensively last week was him using his legs. He's got to use his legs. If he's got the free run, I think back to that second play of the game. You remember that second 49er play of the game? He's rolling to his left. The linebacker's in coverage, I think, on our tight end there. He's trying to throw late back across his body, back to the middle of the field, and the ball goes right to the 49er defender's hands. It would have been another one of these early in the game interceptions. He's had two of them here in the back half of the schedule. That would have been a third. The guy just dropped it. But on that very same play, he had 7, 8, 9 yards ahead of him to go there and take those yards instead of doing that. And you can't do that in this game. If there's yards for you to take that are free and easy yards to take, absent there being a broken coverage down the field, don't try to make that tough, tight throw late. There's a couple of weeks ago we saw this, Brendan, with the Marquise Goodwin on the play that got him injured, and IR'd, right? Geno's moving up into the top front of the pocket. He's looking. He's got space up in front of him to go get a first down. Instead, he tries to throw it to Goodwin late, deep down the field, and Goodwin tries to stretch out because there's no separation there. He's just trying to throw him open, basically, and Goodwin hurts his hand. Just run with it, Geno. If it's there, take it. If you got to run 10 times in this game, we're going to need that. Walker's going to need that with him being the only real healthy back you got. So I hope they lean that way with it.
Okay, so another question I have, another thing I've been thinking about is with this Seahawks offensive line, because Phil Haynes missed practice all week, listed as questionable. If he cannot go, that kind of takes away the Gabe Jackson security blanket. And it seems like the Seahawks kind of established a pattern this year of saying, okay, Gabe, you're going to play until your knee gives out. And then when your knee gives out, we're going to throw in Haynes for the rest of the game. Do you think maybe, especially because this is going to be such a run-heavy game anyway, potentially, maybe we see something similar with Jake Curhan? How would you feel about that?
He's been bad in guard. I wouldn't want to see him at guard. It's been an S show every time you've thrown him at right guard, and they've tried a couple of times.
In pass blocking, I think he's a good run blocker there, though.
Yeah, yes, reasonably so. I mean, his grades have been pretty down bad. It wasn't good when we've tried him at it. I think he can hang in there for a while, but you're also talking about putting up against pretty tough competition down there. Maybe Kinlaw is not the toughest, I guess, if you're gotten him fast. Of course, Kinlaw's a 3-tag, so you're not having him up against Kinlaw. Kinlaw's going up against Lewis. So then that means you're going to get the other guy on the other side as the 1-tech on him. I think Gabe Jackson probably looks at this game, Brennan. Part of that management comes from you're playing a long season. You're trying to keep the guy fresh throughout the course of the year. Now you have a guy in Gabe Jackson, 33 years old. I think the writing's on the wall that this is probably his last year with how they've had to manage that leg. He knows this is his last shot. He's in the playoffs, a guy that hasn't been in the playoffs much in his career. I think he's a guy that's going to be one of those guys like Al Woods in this game, like Bruce Irvin's in this game, that are going to be like, look, we're laying this all on the line. You're getting anything I got left in this tank to give, you're getting in this game. I recognize this is it for me. This is my last opportunity right here. There is no tomorrow. I think you're going to get the benefits of that from these guys a little bit. I bet Gabe Jackson plays one of his best games of the year in this game because of that spirit kind of inside him a little bit of the end of the road's here now. This is maybe my last start of my career here that I'm going to get to roll out.
Yeah, I agree about Gabe. I think Al Woods is likely to retire as well. And I think Bruce has already kind of insinuated that he's done after this year too. So yeah, that is an underrated element here. You have these guys you have a couple guys who have never played in the playoffs before, but you also have guys who this is not their first rodeo. And in fact, it's their last rodeo specifically. That's a good point.
Yeah. I think you'll see something a little bit different from all three of those guys. Will have some moments of flashing in this game. I'm not saying domination, but they'll come up and make some big plays at points in this game with that spirit of recognizing that sense of urgency that's there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think Bruce Irvin has played like 35 combined snaps the last 2 games. Al Woods missed several games at the end of the year. Maybe that's all kind of for this moment, where
Mm.
now they actually got some rest.
I hope, yeah, I would think so too. And it felt like that, but Bruce came in and they were just playing him way too much for a guy that didn't have any training camp. And I think that
Yeah.
dip, he needed a little bit of that time to kind of like, oh, hold on here. That's a lot of snaps on my 35-year-old body here. So, giving him a little bit of a chance, yeah, to maybe have a little bit of a, and you're right. Woods, they've done a good job of managing Woods throughout the whole course of the year. At no point has he ever been really having to be ridden too much. They've done really nicely there. So hopefully he's good enough to go.
Yeah, actually, if you look at it, the only defensive lineman on the Seahawks that's played more than half the snaps this year is Quentin Jefferson, who played like 52%.
Yeah.
You had like Puna Ford at 48, or maybe I got those backwards. I think Puna was actually at 52, Jefferson was 48, Shelby was around 48. It was a really good balancing act on this defensive line. The problem was the players are just not that good.
Right. But you agree that this is again with our Jalen Carter outlook on things. This is the proper approach to look at the defensive line and through the future. Is that you're not looking at the guys going 75% of the snaps. You're looking at the guys going from somewhere between probably 35 to 47% of the snaps in what they're going to run out there, and that you got to build a unit up. You're not building just a starting crew; it's a unit you build up to make it into a strength.
Yeah, I think the superstars in this league will probably be playing more than that percentage, though.
I
Like
agree.
Hutchinson played somewhere around 78 or 79%. If I looked it up recently, I think it was something like that. And I think that's probably fair because he's really good. But
I think
yeah.
it is. I think it is, but I also think there's a little bit of a to detriment on those guys. Like you look at Aiden Hutchinson's run grade,
Mhm.
and that speaks to me of like if I think about a player playing too many snaps, especially on like okay, you accumulate the sacks. Where's your pressure rate, and then where is your did you have all those extra snaps to get those sacks at that point? And are you in the run game getting wore down a little bit, which I would argue probably was the case a little bit. I think he's a better run defender than he showed this year, but probably playing as many snaps as he did kind of started to wear that down. And you want to do that. You're right. The draw from the team is to play the superstar more snaps. You want your best out there. But I think that there is a little bit of, again, if you commit to more of that rotational basis and understanding the benefits of that you get on the other side of it, they outweigh. If I've got a dynamic bunch, and then Brendan, I'd offer if you do see a guy out there being ran that many snaps, he's not being ran out there that many snaps with a good backup behind him who can go out there and roll a little bit. He's being asked to do it because they don't have anything else behind the guy too. Those two things always seem to kind of go in alignment with each other. And so
Mhm.
coaches, if I think they had their choices, Carroll specifically on this one, would like more of that rotational basis to go in point of it. And that our defensive line will be at its best in the future if we as fans kind of look at it from that standpoint of how they want to build and go at it. But that's all the more reason why, Brendan, you have to have a lot of bodies. It doesn't take just one or two guys or you get this guy or just this guy. You need a lot of guys in there to make it work at that point because just having one or two horses isn't going to get you there.
Right. I definitely see the Seahawks fans starting to turn on Jalen Carter. I don't know if it's because they're just mad because it's going to be so hard to get him now or what, but there's definitely a push from Seahawks fans of like, oh, his bad conditioning. Like that's the easiest thing in the world to fix.
I heard the same thing this week with it. I've watched the two games with Ohio State and with this last game in the first half, which there was really like two real series of football in that TCU game before that thing turned into basically whatever. But when I watched that first half, I don't know what people are watching with Carter myself. There's the play where he breaks through, causes pressure, and is directly responsible for the interception at hand. All of these people talking about wind sprints don't pay any attention to that. I broke down with you on your channel last week the play that was in the Ohio State game of the play segment that led to the sack with him taking up two offensive linemen so the defender could get in as a blitzer, and then him coming back the next play and stopping the run. Like, I hear the same thing you're hearing from some Hawk fans on it. It's to me a little silly a bit. This guy is going to be a dominant defender in this league. I know some people are wanting to see Aaron Donald, and so that's where people that will then it's like changing the argument, where it's like, I never said he was Aaron Donald. You never said he's Aaron Donald. And guess what? There's maybe one Aaron Donald in NFL history. So, you're not going to get a guy coming out of college with 56 pressures in his final year and 12 sacks from a defensive tackle position. That's just not probably going to happen very often. But that has nothing to do with the value of Jalen Carter, that he's not Aaron Donald or Chris Jones. Because if you go with Chris Jones as the next guy, Brendan, we're talking about two guys that are going to be the best defensive tackles of their era who are both going in the Hall of Fame. let's lower down our expectations a little bit of what we want to cover, what we think would come from the 5th pick. Yes, you should get a great player, and hopefully he's that player that has that Hall of Fame potential. But if we're looking at it through that lens of whether he's a success or not, or whether he's worthy to be picked to that position or not, if he's that guy, then you're looking at it in the wrong light, in my opinion. And if you're picking apart, like you just said, things that are controllable and fixable, then you're overlooking what's the main point of what you should be looking at in a prospect and valuing that prospect. And when he gets to go in an NFL program and an NFL weight room for a full year, he's going to get himself into shape. I guarantee you on that. He ain't going to be out of shape with that kind of situation. When he's in college and still going to classes and still a kid and still not a professional yet, maybe he's not completely all 100% football, 100%. Is that my biggest knock? I'm going to drill a kid for that on? No, I don't. It's fixable. It's correctable. I worry more about the things like with LJ Collier. Oh, look, there's no first step quickness from this guy, and he's got no bend. That's kind of a problem on a pass rusher I can't fix, right? I can't develop bend. I can't develop first step quickness. So it's what is stuff that's fixable in a prospect? What is the stuff that's unfixable and should knock them down as a prospect as far as how you view them?
Yeah, I completely agree. And we'll talk a lot more about this stuff when the offseason starts off. I guarantee you that.
Yes, we will.
Mm-hmm. Corsos de Gutierrez, thank you for the $4.99. In your most honest, logical opinion, on a scale of 0 to 100, what percentage do you guys really believe that we can shock the world and win? No one else does. You can go ahead and lead with that one. I have a number in mind.
Well, the stats since 1970 about teams having to face a team for a third time that they won 2-0 against, essentially going up against that team for the third time, is 14-9 since 1970. So the team that is going to win the third game is 14 wins and 9 losses. So it's been kind of close somewhat to 50-50 for that third game of those two teams. A little bit more in the margin of the team that's won twice, a little bit. 57, 58%, right? That they win that game, but it's still kind of close. And so, and what do I believe? Honestly, I don't put the Niners as this high ahead. I'd say that it's to me, it's almost like I know I shouldn't say this, but it feels to me almost like a 50-50 game with this going into me. I don't buy into the stuff that people are saying. I'm not buying into the narrative. I'm not buying into this crap. We're going to get run over. This team's a juggernaut. This team is this. I've heard it too much on this. And you know what? It just doesn't, something sits foul in my mouth on this, Brendan, that just doesn't quite allow me to swallow it. And I'm not going to swallow it. So if I don't think it, I'm going to say I don't think it. I think this game's a 50-50 game when it comes down to it. The weather, the elements, them playing us the third time, this being a divisional matchup, the games tending to be pretty close between the Niners and Seahawks historically, especially recently historically. So I go, hey, it's to me down to more of a 50-50 game. I'll give maybe a slight nudge to the Niners for them playing at home and stuff, but I certainly don't put them as a 10-point whatever in this game, as a 10-point favorite in this game, or think somehow that we're going to be blowing off this football field. I just don't see it. So I put it there.
Yeah. In a clean game, in normal conditions, I would have said 25%. Mm-hmm. But I really think this rainstorm makes things so kind of random. It's more like, I'd say somewhere around like 38 to 40%. I still would say it's unlikely, but I do think the rain changes things dramatically. It just, I'm thinking about in a normal game, I could see Christian McCaffrey just going up the middle, making one cut, and he's gone. Mm-hmm. You're not going to see that as much in this game. That's going to be really hard to do.
Yeah.
Things like that. So I've come a little bit more towards that. I'm still not where you are, though. Not yet.
Bring you over here yet.
Yeah, and also I think about, that example you gave about teams that won twice against another team in the regular season and then played them again in the playoffs. Like I've seen it with the the Cowboys Giants in 2007. That was an example where the team that lost the first two won the third one. That was just kind of a circumstance where the Cowboys committed a ton of penalties in the third game, and the Giants were able to get pressure on Romo pretty much every play. And it kind of made sense why that happened. They just kind of found the right pressure packages at the exact right moment.
Well, that's why I think there's some success for that third team, being that, hey, you've not stat at 14-9. That's still a hell of a stat difference as far as or 9-14 instead of being 0 for blah, blah, blah. Those other games you were, right? So 0 for 50 essentially for the combination of those games prior to that 14-9 game or whatever it would be. Yeah, I think what that is, Brendan, what you're talking about would be my point. Is like you go in that first matchup, you're like, okay, let's try this stylistically. And it's like, oh, that didn't work. That didn't work. And this kind of worked. Okay, we'll try this stuff on the second matchup and move this around. And okay, that didn't work, but that kind of did work. We got a little closer there. This sort of worked. But then we tried this other secondary thing. Okay, let's go to this third or fourth option thing that we have as another try to this next thing. And sort of like you finally get through the different options to find the one that can kind of work, that's also being intelligently informed by what didn't work prior. So I do think that there's a little bit of that to it when you're the team that's won, Brendan. You're not going to try different things, right? This is what got us the win before. So let's lean into what we did before to help us get the win again against the same team. Why do it differently? That's the formula here. But if the other team's changing their formula, your formula might not apply as well to like it had prior before. And so I think that's how that kind of does work a little bit in that team's favor, that is a little bit in that 0-2 front of things.
Right.
I think too, we had a team last year too. Don't forget last year, the same Niners team, right? Beat the Rams twice during the regular season, and then what?
Yeah,
lost the Rams in the playoffs.
Yeah, and why did that happen? It happened mostly because Jimmy Garoppolo's terrible, right? And he ran out of time.
Yeah.
Another example that, and I'm trying to think of why did this stuff happen? Not just it happened. 2004 Packers-Vikings. Packers beat the Vikings twice in the regular season. Vikings got in at 8-8 and actually blew out the Packers, I think, in Lambeau in the playoffs. And that game was just like, oh, Brett Favre just lost his mind and threw 4 interceptions. Like he just had one of those games where he forgets about preservation and any of that stuff. So I mean, I don't think that Shanahan would let Purdy throw 4 interceptions in a game. That's just kind of unthinkable.
No, I don't think he'll put him in that position to or make the high leverage throws that Brett was no doubt trying to make, right? Because those throws were like Brett off his back foot, putting a whole shot 40 yards on a 6-inch window. Like it was one of those kind of plays. So he's not going to be having Purdy do that. There'll be a lot of easy completions built into the structure of this offense.
Yeah, and then a couple years ago you had the Saints-Bucks where the Saints had beaten the Buccaneers decisively 2 regular season games, and then they lose the playoff game. And I think that was just Drew Brees didn't have anything left. He ran out of gas in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, and a couple of these examples were given. We got aging quarterbacks that are kind of at their end. They can't be the difference makers they once were in the playoffs. Probably as much a big factor in those ones. And like you said, Garoppolo, his limitations are always going to land at some point in the playoffs, one way or another, right? And he's going to show up. And then Stafford, obviously playing out of his mind as he was, because he had that great run in the playoffs last year too. So I think a bit of that combination is there, at place. But also, like you said, the pressure packages on you, like there's things that you have within how you play it. I mean, it could be even on how you do your kick return game. Like, oh, we're seeing them overrun this and we haven't attacked this in the kick return game here. What if we go backside with it and we bring a blocker around through here? You see some things that you're going to try, and if you're losing, you're more apt to try newer, different things and be more outside the box in your approach. First, I think if you're winning, you're just going to try to just maintain and stay the flow, but then that makes you easier to predict from the other team's standpoint because they know what more to expect.
Right. And I mean, I'm trying to remember, are there any other examples in my football watching life of a team trying to go for the 3-for and not quite getting it? Like the Steelers got the 3-for against the Ravens in 2008. I remember that. All 3 games in that series were incredibly close, though. All 3 games in that series came down to like the last minute or the last play. So that almost kind of felt like it was an even matchup, and the Steelers just got heads 3 straight times.
Yeah. And that's more of where we do tend to land on these divisional games. They do tend to be close. I mean, I do offer, like, if you want an explanation, and try not to be like an excuse, but an explanation on this is that first game against the Niners where you did lose pretty badly. Let's look at the factors at hand, though. Seahawks had just played on a short week, right? Coming from Denver, their Super Bowl game of the season, where we thought that was going to be the most important game of the season, including, I think, Carroll and the team. Mm-hmm. You've got a short week going in the Niners. The Niners get absolutely embarrassed in Chicago. People are questioning whether their year's about to fly off the handle and they're about to be total crap. And so they've got way more to play for and invested in that type of game. We're a little bit like, okay, relax, take an exhale breath, so to speak. And then you got that second matchup where it comes down to, as Carroll said, two broken plays, one from Mullen, one from Brooks, where aside from those 2 plays, everything was very tight. McCaffrey played that game. You held him in check for the most part, and so, things have gotten tighter and close to that last matchup. I think that's more indicative of what's going to be happening this next week, and that we're a little closer on this team as far as being able to play with them. I'm not saying talent-wise, but just on that familiarity and understanding of how to deal with Shanahan teams and all of that down the line, along with the fact that you do have a 7th-round rookie quarterback that you're playing this week. I think that does level things off just a little bit, no matter how good he's playing.
Let's see here. John Stillwell, thank you for the $20.
What's up, John?
Oh, no.
Hey,
What's
John.
up, John? Thank you. Hi, guys. The big edge we do have are the motivational skills of Coach Carroll. He knows how to get the best out of his players, and that gives us a puncher's chance.
Well said. Well said. And it's good to see you in the chat, John. I look, Carroll's going to have this team ready to know that they're the underdogs, that no one's expecting anything out of them. And he's the absolute right coach to be able to sell this type of messaging to the team to get them to buy in on it and understand that, like, nobody thinks you should be here. Nobody thinks you deserve to be here. Everybody's calling you like playoff frauds for even being in here. The Niner fans are already, drawing up their Super Bowl plans and their tickets, say nothing of the fact that they expect to win this football game. How do you guys feel about that? How do you want to respond to that? I mean, this is like, coaching mana as far as to be able to use this in order to be able to get the other side of this and really as a motivational factor that you can't kind of self-generate, right? You'd like to be able to do this kind of messaging that you can put to the team, but it's already out there. He just has to pick it up off the ground. It's being spoken about nationally. It's coming out of San Francisco, and so you put it to the team, you go, what do you guys think? And again, no pressure, you guys. You saw it on that video. I know you saw the video too. You got the team over there doing the gritty, and then here comes Carroll on his little scooter, and you can just feel that vibe. You can feel that, like, hey, they're loose and free right now. There's nobody tight right now. There's nothing, and that tightness is something to be spoken about. You get in this playoffs, you feel it as a fan when you get in the playoffs. You felt it in 2013 where you're like, we got to get the Super Bowl with this team. This is a Super Bowl team this year. We can't miss this chance like we did in 2012 with that Falcon game and how well we were playing. We got to go now. This is our time now. And you got nervous in those games, and you were kind of going, ooh, and that's what happens. The players, same thing. The tightness goes up. It all ratchets up just a little bit more. And the fact that you have a team that can play loose, that can come out of this game, go win or lose, this is an amazingly successful year for us. We are on our path. We are on our way, but we can also win it. And I think that that's a freedom that the 49ers don't have, because you beat them. You send that organization into a bit of disarray. You have literally fans after that game, if you beat them, questioning whether or not Shanahan should be their coach going into the future. And many of them at that.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. You have them as is. You have them as is. So you're right. If that happens, and we I guess we've seen it before. Like Marty Schottenheimer goes 14-2, loses his first playoff game, he gets fired. So it's not unthinkable, I guess. And while I think Shanahan's a phenomenal coach, I don't know if it seems more like it's more like a football savant thing rather than an ability to really get the best out of men at all times thing, I guess.
I think you're right on that. I think that if I wanted to try to make a final conclusion about Shanahan and where he fits as a head coach, I want to first be able to make it when I know he's got a tried and true quarterback that's not limiting him. And I don't know that even if you come out the end of this with Brock Purdy as a 49er fan, if you could really say that at that point, then I know that he's been given that guy who can kind of, I'm not talking about being like MVP type guy, but you get him a poor man's Patrick Mahomes equivalent down there. I think he's going to make that offense pretty good. I think he's had to coach around a little bit of Garoppolo's limitations, and Trey Lance still trying to kind of find his way. And now he's got 7th round, rookie in there. But I do agree your point stands. I don't think he's necessarily the motivator of men of a guy like Carroll is. He's an X's and O's guy more than that, I think. But that would be my one thing I do wonder about with him, if you could get him that kind of quarterback who has that talent and that ability, if he could not really take that offense to another level. But I'm also unsure,
Yeah, I maintain that I am terrified for the day when Shanahan gets a real quarterback, which is why, we'll see what happens with Trey Lance. But I believe that if Trey Lance is who I thought he was, because I really liked him in the draft, if that works out, then it's almost like game over.
It very well could be. I mean, we're going to have to be hoping that some of these other aging stars out there that are really great right now, like your Kittles or your Trent Williams or, your Deebo Samuels, don't have a real long prime at that point, because that's going to be dangerous if he does become that guy next year for them. But they lose. I mean, you have your separate camps, Brendan. You have 3 camps there. You'll have your Purdy camps. You'll have your Lance camps. You'll have probably even some Garoppolo people still hanging on there. And then you'll have even maybe a 4th camp of those saying trade for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's going to get pretty hairy there probably if they lose this game in a magnificent way.
Yeah. I mean, the Brady thing still has to be on the table, right?
That's there too. Camp too. I would 100% put it on the table. I think it all goes on the table. They win, they get to the Super Bowl. They're feeling good about their quarterback situation, all that. But you lose, And it's going to be a lot of question marks about what the next step is to take here. And there's no certainty and no clear, clear pathways there for him.
Right. So, is there anything else to really cover when it comes to this game? Like, talked about the offense, defense. We got a big special teams advantage, I guess. Right.
Special teams have got to be special, Brendan. You need your guys this week to carry it and be that part of the team that they've been throughout the course of this year. Myers can't miss a kick in this game. Dixon's going to have to flip the field for us a couple times. Put it inside the 10-yard line, right? Your kick returner, Ubagui, needs to get us up to the 44, 45-yard line at times to help us out in the field position game, where the Niners have been the best team in the league in field position. So their special teams is fairly strong. They're the team with the best starting field position in the league. And their defense puts teams, or their special teams puts teams in the worst defense field position points on the other side of it. And you have to overcome that by being that great. But we're number one. I think I just saw you drop a video on your channel with this. We were the number one, right, by Football Outsiders. They got us as the number one this year.
No, we were number 4 and we were number 2 in weighted.
Okay. So number 4, number 2, still damn good. And we got to lean on that in this game in order to win. You're right to bring it up. That was one of my keys, is the special teams has got to be special in this contest for us to win this game. Not merely good. We got to have them be a special part, as they've been throughout the course of this year more often than not.
Yeah. It was actually interesting. You had the Bills were by far the best special teams team in the league. I think mostly because they had the 2 touchdowns against the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they had a massive advantage. Then it was 3 teams basically all at like 4%.
Mm-hmm.
Us and 2 other teams. It might have been Baltimore and I can't remember the other team. And then you had a big drop off to Atlanta at number 5. So you could almost say we were tied for second even without the weighting. But Buffalo was number 1.
Okay, well, that makes sense, and that's still it's great to see that that's being executed this year, Brendan, that the final results are fitting to the plan, because you're spending $4 million on a kicker, right? You draft a 5th round punter and then spend the money on him, and then do the steps they do, and sometimes how they build the roster, like letting go of a marquee player so you can have a better guy there as far as your special teams unit goes. You're getting the benefits of that, and it is purposeful. So that's a part. The only other spot I would say that's a very keynote part of this, that we've lost both 2 times in the first 2 matchups this year, the turnover battle. You cannot lose the turnover battle in this game and hope to win. Geno's got to stay clean with the ball. You can't have fumbles. Guys got to protect the ball. And likewise, you got to try, especially in a rainy game, to be ripping that thing out and flipping the field at times if you can do it. So you absolutely have got to win the turnover battle here as well, or at least have that be a zero neutral thing, right? Where it's just as many as the other. And that's not something you're losing in, because hard to see you going on the road, losing the turnover battle and coming out of this game with a win.
I can't imagine winning it without some turnovers. And, these conditions are going to enable that potentially.
Right.
Maybe we just have to punt the ball 8 times like the Niners did against the Packers last year and still win.
That's it. That's how it's embrace, like you said earlier, man. Embrace the chaos. It's chaos ball here this week. That's all it is. It's beautiful chaos ball.
So let's go ahead and put it on the table here. Mm-hmm. As Jean-Jacques Taylor of ESPN says sometimes, speak now or shut up later. What do you think is going to go down? How do you think it's going to happen? Let's put it on the table here.
Look, I've gotten more and more to this place as the week's gone by, and maybe it's a little bit of just hearing so much of the Niners talking all their noise and being tired of it, being tired of hearing about what we're not going to do and what we're not going to accomplish and how we're not able to even be on the field with this, how we don't deserve to be there. I've kind of, maybe some of this is being skewed by this at this point, Brendan, but I don't really care. The Hawks are going to take this game into overtime, 2020. It's going to be a fun game, an interior game. We're getting to 2020. And then I think that we get a turnover return for a touchdown or a field goal at the end there to win it. And we come out of this game with the win. I'm predicting our Seahawks shock the world, break the Niners' hearts, and continue just more to fitting to type of how this season has gone, going all the way back to the start of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I moved that direction as the week went on. I just don't know if I got there. I just don't think I got there. I'm still looking at it. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm looking at this offense in these conditions against that defense. I'm like, where are the points going to come from, man? Like you might need Brock Purdy to just start dropping the ball Alex Smith style because his hands are too small to hold it in the rain. And I ended up landing on something like 17-13 Niners.
Okay.
So what I will say if that's the score, that means you had a chance to win the game at the end, right? You're right there.
Right.
And if you can make one or two really special plays right at the end, that should be enough to win the game. But it's just so hard to break through against this really tough Niners defense. That's the thing I cannot get past right now.
They're not here by luck or just by they played some piss poor schedule and they haven't earned to be here, Brendan. They earn the right to be the top team. In my opinion, they're more dangerous than the Eagles are. They're a better team than the Eagles are. They are absolutely kind of a juggernaut in how they've been built right now with this team and how it's set up. Both sides of the ball are really, really good. But there's just some sneaking kind of suspicion and instinct inside me on this one that just says this thing's going to be a one-score game in the fourth quarter. We're going to have our chance. We're going to have our opportunity. Whether we can pull that or not, we'll see, but we'll at least be there and in it. And there's no way we're getting boat raced. There's no way that they're going to be lapping us around the field on this one. I just can't see that. I think this Hawks team is going to show up in a way to give the Niners every bit of the fight that they can possibly take this next week.
Yeah, I don't see a blowout at all for multiple reasons.
No.
So I think it's going to be a one-score game. I think it's going to find a way to be a one-score game. I don't think the Niners in these conditions with this quarterback are able to put up like 24 plus points. I just don't think it happens.
I don't either. Low scoring game. It's a dogfight. It's mucked up. You said the chaos ball out there. And to me, all ends well for a potentiality of an upset. That's all the makings and recipes, spices, and you got it all there, right? All the cups and the pinches and all that for the potential of an upset. That's a rookie quarterback, 7th round quarterback, right? Like, how would you think a number 2 seed would lose in the playoffs? Well, if they had 7th round quarterback, rookie starting, something like that. Yeah, that's what they do. Oh, okay. So I think the recipe is here, man. I do. The conditions, where you're at, division matchup, tough to beat a team 3 times in a row. All that put in together, you throw it all into the bowl, man. And I'm eating that salad. Salad.
I mean, I think back to that Niners-Packers game last year where the Niners won because they blocked a punt. Maybe it takes something like that, but that stuff happens. That stuff does happen sometimes.
And that just to your point, that game was just a ugly, cold, nobody was getting anything really done kind of game. It was just a mucked up, dirtied up kind of game, just like this one will be as well. And that just levels everything out to me. And it makes it more of a kind of a coin toss type situation.
Okay. So I think we basically done everything that needs to be done here. We had tremendous attendance on the stream tonight. We've got close to 450 people right now.
Go.
We're hanging out above 400 pretty much the whole night. Everyone's excited. Everyone's intrigued. Everyone's happy. And, what a difference a year makes, right? Think about how unhappy people were a year ago. Think about how some of those streams went where, especially at one point when you were like 3-8 and it was pulling teeth to get 100 people because people didn't want to think about the Seahawks then because things were bad. But everybody wants to think about the Seahawks now. Everybody wants to because this season went better than people thought and the future looks so bright. And here we are with one more game to play. The present is bright too. It's not just the future. The present is bright. So I'm excited to see what happens on Saturday afternoon. We are going first. Like I said, I want to see what we have. And if it doesn't go our way, then I can say there was a lot of value here. We had the value of experience in the playoffs, the value of getting these young guys those reps. And I believe that things will get even better going forward. So I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. Brandon, I want to thank you for coming out and hanging out with me tonight and doing this show.
My pleasure, brother. My pleasure.
Yeah. To everybody in the chat, if you want to see me a little later tonight, I will be hopping on Twitch. We're going to do the second half of Lego Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back episode with my friend. So if you want to watch that, head on over there. And we will do this again on Tuesday, win or lose.
Win or lose, hopefully win.
Yeah, hopefully. But of course, we got to get behind him.
Got to let him know, Brendan.
Yeah,
got to let him know.
One more time.
Maybe one more time.
Yeah.
Maybe the first of still 3 more other times.
Yeah, that's on the table as well. But if it is the last time, you got to make it a good time.
Let him know.
So I'm going to say it. And I hope you guys are saying it wherever you guys are tonight, too. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.